You walked through their traps with your soul untouched. Now they watch in silence, trying to learn what they'll never understand. You didn't beg. You didn't break. You didn't bleed loud enough for them to feel victorious, and that's what burns them the most. You made it quietly, without their validation, without crawling for crumbs. And now they lurk in the shadows, pretending not to care, while dissecting every step you take like you're some rare species that slipped through their system. You are the glitch in their control. You are the proof that their structure is a lie, and that truth is driving them mad. You see, they're not watching you out of love. They're watching you like scientists observe a storm they can't predict. With fear, with fascination, with frustration. You weren't supposed to win, not without trading your truth, not without joining their circus of masks. But here you are, chosen by something far bigger than status, untouched by the dirt they threw, and still rising. You didn't just survive their plans, you embarrassed them by doing it your way. And if this message has already stirred something deep inside you, if it speaks the truth they never wanted you to hear, then repay this moment. Hit like and subscribe, not for me, but to amplify this message to every soul walking through the fire, thinking they're alone. It's our responsibility to shine this light louder than their silence. Let's get one thing straight. People like you weren't made for the spotlight. You became the spotlight. You are not chasing stages, applause, or acceptance. You were forged in rejection, made in solitude, and backed by the universe itself. That's why they study you. That's why there's a strange tension in the room every time your name comes up. Not peace, but paranoia. Because they know something they'll never say out loud. You made it. And you made it clean. No shortcuts, no masks, no need to morph into something hollow just to fit their mold. You moved like truth, raw, unshakable, and slow burning, and that makes you dangerous. Psychological research confirms it. When someone defies the expected path and still thrives, they become an object of obsession to those who feel trapped. Your presence exposes their excuses. Your growth mocks their laziness. Your light forces them to face their shadows. That's not inspiration to them. That's agitation. They don't admire you. They dissect you. They monitor your story, not because they love it, but because they don't understand how it's even possible. You weren't born into power. You built it, brick by brick, through every betrayal, setback, and silent season. While they were rehearsing how to belong, you were becoming unignorable. And now you are the unanswered question in every insecure room. You are the living reminder that truth can win. And they hate that, because your win wasn't just personal, it was a protest. You're not just on their mind. You're under their microscope. They try to copy your results, but they'll never get the same answer, because they skipped the pain, the process, the purity. You weren't built in public. You were built in the dark, and now that you're shining, it's burning their illusion. So don't flinch when the eyes stay on you. Don't shrink because they're watching. That's what they want, for you to question your power, your path, your progress. But you didn't come this far to make them comfortable. You didn't rise just to sit still. Let them stare, let them wonder, let them talk. Because the truth is this: you didn't follow their map. You became the compass. And no wonder you're being studied, because you made it. So if you've ever felt eyes on you, silence around you, or energy shift when you walk in the room, stay right here. That's not coincidence. That's confirmation. You're not just surviving. You're being observed because you already crossed the line they swore you'd never reach. Drop the number 77 in the comments if you know you've made it out of their system. And now they can't stop watching. The ones who get it feel it. And if you're truly the chosen one, something in you won't let you click away. Let's get into it. Number 1, they're not watching to learn. They're watching because you broke their system and kept walking. You were supposed to fold. Instead, you turned into a force. Now they watch, not to admire you, but to calculate how their plan failed. They don't watch you with awe. They don't scroll through your life with respect. What you're seeing isn't curiosity. It's damage control. It's the desperate silence of people who thought they had you mapped out, only to realize you were a whole different language they never learned to read. You were supposed to break, remember? You were designed to fail. In their minds, you had no blueprint, no backing, no business making it out clean. But you did. And now, all they have left is confusion disguised as interest. Let's stop sugarcoating it. These people aren't inspired. They're shaken. They had the script ready. You'd crumble, beg, blend in, and fade out. You didn't. You rewrote the damn story with your survival alone. And now they're stuck on the sidelines, treating your life like a science experiment, trying to dissect your calm, decode your strength, and figure out how someone like you slipped through the cracks without selling out. They never expected you to walk through hell without scars that made you bitter. They never expected your peace to stay intact after betrayal. And they damn sure never expected you to smile like you weren't supposed to be buried. That's why they watch. That's why their silence is so loud. They're not taking notes for admiration. They're taking notes because your existence exposes them. Because here's what they can't wrap their heads around. You didn't respond how they wanted you to. They threw disrespect at you like knives, and you didn't bleed publicly. They questioned you, mocked you, isolated you, and you didn't beg to be understood. You just leveled up. Quietly, strategically, unapologetically. Now look around. They're still talking in circles, trying to figure out what fuel you used to fly while they stayed grounded. Here's the truth. They underestimated the power of not being seen. They mistook silence for weakness. They thought that just because you weren't loud, you weren't dangerous. But your power was never meant for their comfort. It was meant to disrupt. You became the disruption. You didn't ask for permission. You became the permission. And they can't understand how that happened without their stamp of approval. They thought your pain would turn you into them, bitter, small, performative. But instead, your pain became precision. You learned how to walk in rooms that weren't made for you and still command presence without saying a word. They wanted you to act like the labels they stuck on you: failure, victim, nobody. But you peeled every one of those off, burned them, and built armor from the ashes. Now they watch because they don't know how to categorize you anymore. You don't fit the files. You don't match the patterns. You're emotionally unreadable because you've outgrown their games. And nothing terrifies manipulators more than someone they can't control or predict. They're not curious, they're disturbed. They thought you'd mirror their behavior. They thought you'd lash out, spiral, fold inwards. But instead, you found clarity. You learned how to love yourself in a world that taught you to doubt your every step. That's why they study you now. Because you became the one thing their ego can't compete with. A soul that survived with integrity. They'll never admit it, but your growth cornered them. Your calm made them nervous. Your elevation put pressure on their comfort. And now they wear fake smiles and give hollow compliments while secretly running an internal autopsy on your life. Wondering how you turned pain into peace, betrayal into boundaries, and isolation into power. And you want to know the part that stings them the most? You didn't just survive, you thrived with nothing but your vision, your pain, and your relentless refusal to become small. You didn't get their approval, and you didn't need it. You didn't play their games, and you still won. You didn't fit in, and now they don't know how to replace you. They try to mimic your energy now, but it doesn't land. Why? Because what you carry wasn't bought, borrowed, or inherited. It was earned, in silence, in suffering, in seasons where no one clapped for you but the universe itself. That's the difference. You didn't perform for power. You became power by refusing to betray yourself. So now they study, they observe, they lurk. Not to learn how to rise, but to understand how you rose without them. They treat your peace like it's suspicious, your joy like it's manufactured, your glow like it must be hiding something, because they can't believe you made it out without becoming them. But here's the cold truth. You don't owe them clarity. You don't owe them softness. You don't owe them access. You owe yourself the silence to keep building while they keep guessing. Let them confuse your evolution with ego. Let them call your peace fake. Let them choke on their projections while you breathe freely for the first time in years. Because you didn't become the chosen one by accident. You became the chosen one because when everything in life told you to disappear, you showed up anyway, louder in presence, quieter in reaction, sharper in energy. You are the contradiction they never prepared for. And no wonder they're still watching, because you made it. Number 2. You didn't just break their blueprint. You proved it was built for cowards. They built a maze and called it success. You walked straight through the wall. Now they stand on the other side, stunned, asking how. You didn't just ignore their map. You burned it. You didn't ask for directions from people who never left their block. You didn't beg for approval from a system that was never designed with your survival in mind. And now, they watch. They obsess. They analyze every move you make like you're some anomaly they can't duplicate. Because you are. Let's be clear, they're not mad because you failed to follow their rules. They're mad because you succeeded without them. You weren't supposed to get here unless you followed their toxic traditions. Kiss the ring, play the game, silence your truth, mimic their version of professional, and beg for crumbs like it's gourmet. But you didn't. You built your own table. You used your scars as screws, your silence as wood, your fire as the hammer, and you sat at that table alone until the universe pulled the right chairs around it. And now they want to know how. Now they want a seat. But they don't get one because you didn't just flip the script, you exposed the fraud in theirs. You see, people don't get uncomfortable when you do things wrong. They get uncomfortable when you do things right, without following the formula they believe is law. They don't envy your journey. They envy the fact that their journey, with all its fake rules and ego worship, didn't deliver what yours did: peace, purpose, and power. So they stare, they gossip, they critique. She must have had help. He probably got lucky. There's no way they did it without something shady. That's the language of people who can't fathom real, because they sold pieces of themselves to climb ladders made of illusion, and they can't believe you made it without ever stepping foot on those rungs. You didn't sacrifice your integrity to be seen. You didn't trade your truth to be included. You walked your own path and still made it to a place they thought only belonged to the compromised. That's why they're angry. You didn't network at the fake parties. You didn't suck up to empty titles. You didn't water yourself down to make others feel big. You stood in the full weight of your truth and rose. You were the outlier in their algorithm, the wild card in their system, the glitch in the matrix they worship like scripture. They spent years building fake pyramids of status, climbing over each other to touch a fake crown. And here you come, with no blueprint, no approval, no crowd, and still make it. You're not supposed to exist, let alone thrive. You're the contradiction their ego can't solve. You didn't wear the costume. You didn't learn their dance. You didn't shrink yourself to fit into their filtered reality. That's what drives them mad, because everything they told themselves was essential, was never real to begin with. It was just protection for their fear. You didn't have fear, you had fire. And that fire? It didn't come from books, mentors, or motivational speeches. It came from the nights no one clapped, the days you questioned your worth, the years they called you too much or not enough. And still, you kept going. Still, you chose yourself. Over and over again. That's what they don't get. You didn't just win. You won without abandoning yourself. And now they want to reverse engineer the results, not to celebrate, not to honor, but to try and control it, to bottle it, to fake it. But they can't, because what you carry can't be taught, it must be survived. They don't understand how someone who didn't take their path still reached a place higher than where they've been circling for years. They want your success, but not your struggle. They want your shine, but not your solitude. They want your voice, but only if it echoes theirs. And that's not how this works. Because you weren't made by the system, you were forged by the rejection of it. You didn't just walk your own path, you paved it through terrain they were too scared to even look at. And now they sit at their well-decorated desks, in glass towers of hollow influence, trying to build a you in a lab. Good luck. You can't clone what was created in chaos. You can't copy what was born from being crushed. You can't replicate resilience. You earn it. And that's what you did, in silence, in struggle, in complete defiance of their lies. They will call you arrogant now because your existence reminds them of their compromise. They'll label you difficult because your truth has no brakes. They'll say you're lucky because accepting your power means admitting their weakness. Let them say it. Let them circle your name like vultures, trying to find a crack in your legacy. Let them study your story like a failed equation, because that's what it is to them. You're not a role model, you're a revelation, and revelations aren't welcomed, they're resisted. But the truth stands, even when surrounded by denial. You made it without the spotlight, without the sponsor, without the shortcut. And now they have to face the brutal reality. Their blueprint was never the only way. It was just the easy way. You didn't take easy. You took real. You walked through rejection, isolation, envy, and misunderstanding. And still, you made it. So let them keep watching. Let them keep guessing. Let them keep losing sleep over how you turned nothing into everything without giving up your soul, because they thought the system was unbreakable. They thought the rules were fixed. They thought success belonged to them, until you proved otherwise. And now, no wonder they're obsessed, because you didn't follow their blueprint. You exposed it. Number 3. They thought the pain would shatter you. Instead, you turned it into a weapon. They expected your trauma to break you. Instead, it baptized you in fire, and now you move like someone who's already survived the end of the world. Pain was supposed to be your prison. That's what they counted on. They watched the betrayals stack up, the lies build, the losses hit like wrecking balls, and they sat back, waiting for you to fold, waiting for you to crack. They expected you to drown in bitterness, to become a shadow of yourself. But what they didn't know is some souls don't drown in darkness. They learn to breathe in it. They wanted your trauma to define you. Instead, you defined yourself in spite of it. You didn't shatter, you sharpened, you didn't collapse. You constructed something stronger from the rubble. Every heartbreak carved out space for wisdom. Every betrayal taught you how to see people with X-ray vision. Every moment of isolation turned into a lesson in power. The kind of power that doesn't shout but hums under your skin like silent thunder. And that's what terrifies them now, because the loud ones, the performative ones, they're easy to predict, easy to break, easy to manipulate. But someone like you, someone who went through hell and came back with clarity, that's a different kind of threat. You didn't just face pain, you used it. And they have no idea how to handle someone who's already survived the very things they'd use to destroy others. Look at history. Frida Kahlo painted masterpieces from her hospital bed with a spine broken in 3 places and a heart broken in 100 more. They thought physical pain would silence her, but it turned her into a living revolution. Malcolm X spent years in prison, written off by society, only to rise with razor-sharp intellect and a voice that still echoes through generations. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in a cage and walked out with more peace in his heart than the men who locked him up. You know what connects them all? Pain didn't break them, it revealed them. And now you walk in that same lineage. You're part of the bloodline that turns trauma into transformation. That's what makes you dangerous, not your strength, but what you did with your suffering. You didn't just get over it. You grew through it, quietly, intentionally, unapologetically. You became the kind of person who can't be shocked anymore because you've already lived through the unthinkable. You move differently now. You see through masks. You smell lies before they're spoken. That's not coldness. That's calibration. People don't understand that kind of power, so they label it. She's too guarded. He's too intense. They've changed. Damn right, you've changed. You had to. Trauma doesn't leave you the same. It either buries you or builds you. And you let it build, brick by brutal brick. You learned how to take the wreckage and sculpt a stronger version of yourself. Now your resilience speaks louder than your words. Your calm is louder than their chaos. And your presence, it's intimidating, not because it's loud, but because it's undeniable. You're dangerous now, not because you seek revenge, not because you want attention, but because you're healed, and healing is a rebellion. In a world that profits off brokenness, wholeness is a threat. The system relies on people staying dependent, staying reactive, staying unsure. But you've reclaimed your power. You know yourself. You trust your gut. And that makes you someone they can't predict or control. So yes, they're watching you now, trying to figure out how you didn't fall apart, how you still smile with all that history in your bones, how you speak with clarity after being silenced, how you walk with grace after crawling through glass. And they'll keep watching because they can't comprehend it. They've never seen someone so deeply hurt, still love with discernment, so violently betrayed, still lead with wisdom, so thoroughly tested, and still refuse to turn bitter. You are proof that pain doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it sculpts. You are the living contradiction to their assumption that trauma equals tragedy. You turned your pain into prophecy, and now your very existence is the revenge. not the petty kind, not the showy kind, the inevitable kind, the kind that rises above without needing to explain, apologize, or seek permission. So let them stare, let them whisper, let them wonder. You didn't just survive, you transcended, and that's why they're afraid. Because they know now, if pain couldn't break you, nothing can. Number 4, you don't have to speak. Your presence exposes their lies. When truth walks in, performance gets nervous. That's why they fidget when you show up, not because you said anything, but because they can't fake it when you're near. You don't need a stage, you don't need a spotlight, you don't even have to say a word. Your existence alone calls the room to attention. Not with noise, not with ego, but with something far more rare, authenticity. In a world addicted to pretending, your realness is a silent earthquake. You walk in, and suddenly the air feels heavier for them, not because you brought drama, but because you brought truth. And truth doesn't shout, it exposes. They don't squirm because you attack. They squirm because your peace reminds them of the war they're faking to win. They wear their masks so tight they forgot who they were until you show up. And then suddenly, every fake laugh feels louder. Every phony gesture feels forced. Every lie they've rehearsed starts to crack around the edges. You're not performing, and that's the threat. You don't chase deep quotes or curated aesthetics to look real. You just are. And the world, it doesn't know what to do with real anymore. They market authenticity, but panic when it walks in the room unfiltered and unbothered. You don't have to tear anyone down. Your presence does it for you. Because people know when they're next to someone who paid for their identity with pain, who earned their discernment through loss, and who forged their power in silence. Not online, not in meetings, but in the depths of being misunderstood. Think of James Baldwin, who sat across from intellectuals and politicians and dismantled decades of illusion with a calm, terrifying clarity. He didn't yell, he revealed. Or Maya Angelou, whose presence alone was thunder wrapped in elegance. Her truth wasn't just poetic, it was radioactive. It didn't scream, it peeled the masks off gently, one by one. You carry that same weight, that same frequency, and it rattles them. You aren't dramatic, you're devastating. Not because of chaos, but because of calm. Not because of flash, but because of substance. You make people confront what they've been running from. When you enter the space, every fake becomes obvious. Every insecurity in the room suddenly wants to hide. You are a human mirror, and not everyone is ready to look. Because you expose what performance can't fake: inner peace, real power, silent knowing, and that kind of presence can't be copied. You make people realize how far they've drifted from themselves. That's why they hate and admire you at the same time. That's why they mock and mimic you in the same breath. They can't replace what they don't understand, so they imitate, hoping it'll stick. But your power wasn't learned, it was survived. That's why they can't hold it without it burning their hands. Let's talk psychology. Research shows that individuals who maintain a strong sense of identity and internal validation often disrupt social dynamics, especially in groups built on performance, status, or unspoken hierarchies. You don't play those games. You don't need to. You bring alignment, and alignment makes noise in rooms built on lies. This is why they throw subtle jabs, why they question your tone, why they exaggerate your presence. They're too serious, too intense, too different. No, you're not too anything. You're just true. And their performance was never built to withstand that. They live for applause. You live for truth. They study how to be impressive. You just are impactful. They chase validation. You walked away from it and never looked back. That's what haunts them. And now they dress up their envy as critique. They shade you with backhanded praise. They ask, who do they think they are? Because they're afraid of asking themselves who they've become. Let them ask. Let them shift in their seats when you walk in. Because you're not here to blend. You're here to disturb what pretends. And you do, without effort. Because you are the rarest kind of force in this world, undeniably real. That's what makes you chosen, and that's exactly why they study you. Number 5, you're not just alive, you're the proof they failed. They wrote your obituary in whispers. Now they have to watch you live like a headline. They didn't just want to hurt you, they wanted to delete you, quietly, strategically, like cowards do. They weaponized rumors, twisted your name, turned your kindness into target practice. They smiled in your face while chiseling a coffin behind your back. And when that didn't break you, they tried the next thing, silence. Not peace, not distance. Calculated, strategic silence, the kind meant to isolate, to erase, to unperson you in slow motion. But here you are, not just alive, not just standing, thriving. You are the living receipt of everything they tried and everything that didn't work. You see, your glow now isn't just about success, it's proof. Your smile, documentation, your healing, evidence, your joy, a signed affidavit that says, yes, I walked through hell, and no, you couldn't keep me there. You are the contradiction to the narrative they handcrafted like assassins in suits and social circles. They called you unstable, you became grounded. They said you were difficult, you became disciplined. They whispered that you were weak, but you came back with strength so undeniable, their lies started sounding like confessions. And now, every time you rise, their version of the story dies a little more. Because let's call it what it is, they wanted you invisible, not just gone from the room, but erased from the memory, gone from the conversation, ghosted from the story. You were a threat to their comfort, so they tried to dismantle your existence one emotional brick at a time. But they made one fatal mistake. You weren't soil, you were seed. They tried to bury you and didn't realize they were planting the very thing that would grow beyond their reach. You didn't just survive, you grew, and now your very presence, your peace, your refusal to shrink is the loudest revenge imaginable. There's no comeback louder than quiet success. There's no scream sharper than calm, unapologetic healing. There's no slap harder than being everything they tried to prevent, and doing it without becoming bitter, broken, or like them. Look at history. Tupac Shakur survived multiple assassination attempts by bullets and by media, and still spoke louder from his truth than entire generations of polished silence. Harriet Tubman wasn't just hunted, she was erased in real time, but still, she walked dozens to freedom, with scars on her body, with fire in her soul. Jean-Michel Basquiat, a black artist in a white curated art world, was called untrained, unstable, even disposable, but he became eternal. You walk with that same coded energy, the kind that says, I'm not just here, I'm living proof. You weren't supposed to be this full, this vibrant, this aware. But you are. You're not walking to prove anything. You are the proof. Every breath you take is a broken lie. Every win is a sentence they now have to swallow. Every ounce of peace you hold is a war they lost. So let them watch. Let them sit in the front row of your resilience. Because you're not just the one who made it out. You're the one they couldn't kill. Number 6, you're the frequency they can't decode, and that's what scares them. You don't move like them, and that's not rebellion, that's resonance. You're tuned to a wavelength their ego can't pick up, and their system was never built to receive. You don't walk like them, you don't speak like them, you don't chase what they chase, and they feel it. Even if they don't have the words to name it, they feel it in their gut that you're not one of them, and never were. You are the anomaly, the outlier, the glitch in the spiritual fabric they tried to iron flat. They crafted a world based on noise, and you came in tuned to silence. They built an identity around titles, clout, and curated images, but you showed up whole, with nothing to prove, and everything aligned. And that's what makes you dangerous. They can't measure you, they can't mock what they can't define, they can't manipulate what they can't locate. Because while they're running on ego, you're running on essence. You're not moved by popularity, you're not seduced by applause, you're not here for the stage, you are here for the signal. You move by a code that doesn't need translation. That's why they don't understand you, but can't look away either. It's why they copy your style, mimic your tone, steal your language, but can never embody your energy. Because your energy isn't studied, it's earned. Through pain, through silence, through the invisible battles that don't show up on resumes or timelines. You are the kind of soul this system didn't prepare for, because you don't run on the fuel they sell. They use fear to control. You use stillness to guide. They use ambition to chase. You use alignment to move. Their compass points to money, followers, and illusion. Yours points to legacy, truth, and depth. And that contrast, that quiet refusal to play their game, it shakes them. You're not a spiritual tourist. You didn't pick this up for aesthetics. You carry ancient weight in your bones. You've seen through lifetimes in a single silence. You've had revelations in heartbreak that rewired your entire blueprint. That's not trend. That's transcendence. They sense your depth, but pretend it's darkness. They call you intense when they mean intimidating. They say you're different when what they really mean is you remind them of everything they're not. You weren't made to fit their system. You were born to remind them it's broken. That's why they study you, why they try to label you, why they try to find the cracks. But you're not broken. You just don't belong to them. You were forged elsewhere, in stillness, in knowing, in dimensions they've only read about, and they know it. They've felt it in the pauses between your words. They've seen it in how you hold your peace when chaos would be easier. They've caught glimpses of it in your eyes, that timeless, heavy knowing that says, I've seen this all before, and I chose to rise anyway. You're not playing with borrowed fire. You are the fire. You're not reacting to energy. You are the frequency. You're not seeking the truth. You carry it. That's what sets you apart. That's why they're shaken. Because when you walk in the room, you don't bring competition. You bring clarity. You collapse illusions without lifting a finger. You are the spiritual anomaly they didn't account for in their plans. They didn't think you'd be this calm. They didn't think you'd be this centered. They didn't think you'd be this powerful without ever asking for permission. And now they don't know what to do with you, so they watch, they mimic, they whisper. Because deep down they know the truth. You're not from their system. You're the signal that ends it. Number 7. You don't move for claps. You move because you were called. While they chase the algorithm, you follow alignment, and that's why they watch from the sidelines while you move in silence, but land like thunder. You don't dance for eyes. You don't beg for likes. You're not programmed to perform for applause. And in this world of curated masks and thirsty metrics, that makes you rare, and that makes you powerful. They don't get it. They can't get it. Because while they're online screaming, "Look at me," you're building legacies in silence. And they can't understand how someone so invisible in the noise could be so undeniable in the impact. They confuse attention with anointing. But you don't move when you're noticed. You move when you're nudged by alignment, not approval. Your rhythm isn't digital, it's divine, it's internal, it's ancient, it's older than their formulas, sharper than their trends, and stronger than their applause. You don't ride waves, you are the current. You're not trying to stay relevant, you're trying to stay real. And in this age, that's rebellion. They're addicted to cycles, addicted to what's next, to virality, to fake energy dressed up as ambition. But your steps aren't driven by urgency. Your pace is sacred. When you move, it's because something deeper is pushing. Not the crowd, but the call. You don't launch when the market says go. You move when the universe says now. And that infuriates them, because your success is not predictable. Your impact isn't on their schedule. Your rise doesn't follow their rules. They can't study it. They can't steal it. They can't replicate it, because they don't even know what's guiding it. And the truth? What guides you isn't external. It's encoded. You are the kind of person who listens to silence, who trusts the still pull instead of the loud trend, who says no when yes is the popular answer, who disappears for a season only to return sharper, clearer, more aligned. Not because you're flaky, but because you're tuned in. Let's talk facts. The greatest movements in history were never loud when they started. Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't trending. He was walking, one foot in divine conviction, the other in terrifying clarity. Rosa Parks didn't post about her resistance. She sat still and shifted the weight of a nation. Nikola Tesla died broke, mocked, misunderstood, but built the frequency that powers the world. You walk in that same current, the current that doesn't make sense to the world until it's too late to ignore. And that's why they study you now. Not because you're trendy, but because you're timeless. You weren't made for 15 minutes of fame. You were made for eternal echo. They chase relevance. You embody reverence. They grind for reach. You wait for revelation. You don't show up because it's your turn. You show up because it's your time. And when you do, the room shifts, not because you're loud, but because you're aligned. So let them scramble for strategy. Let them copy trends. Let them overproduce, overpost, overcompensate. Because while they manufacture impact, you become it, one silent, divine step at a time. You're not here to trend. You're here to transcend. Number 8, you were never given the manual, you became it. They want to copy your moves, but skip the part where you bled for every page. You weren't handed the keys. No one rolled out a red carpet or whispered the formula in your ear. There was no mentor to call, no cheat sheet to lean on. You had to walk blind through storms while they studied in comfort. You had to figure out how to rise without instructions, how to breathe in rooms designed to choke you. And now they stare at your glow like it's downloadable, like they can reverse engineer what only pain could teach. But here's the truth. You are the unwritten manual, the one built from sleepless nights, unanswered calls, betrayal turned into boundaries, and failure that didn't stick. Every scar you carry, that's a paragraph. Every time you were left for dead but chose to keep going. That's a whole damn chapter. and the ones trying to replicate your success. They're reading from books that never mention the fire. Because you weren't made in systems, you were made in solitude. They think there's a trick behind your calm, a template behind your timing, but there is none. You didn't follow steps. You fought for direction. You bled for clarity. You stood at crossroads no one prepared you for. And you made decisions based not on trends, but on trust. Trust in something bigger. Trust in yourself. And now that it's working, now that you're walking in the glow you built in darkness, they want to mimic the result without surviving the process. They want to build what you built, but skip the seasons that broke you into who you are. They want your impact, but not your isolation. They want your wisdom, but not your war. They want your glow, but not your grit. Let them try. Let them download your aesthetic and caption it with stolen inspiration. Let them mimic your moves, copy your voice, trace your light. It won't stick because what you carry wasn't written in ink. It was etched in soul. You were never meant to follow their maps because your road didn't exist yet. You had to carve it with your bare hands. They forget that while they were networking, you were healing. While they were posing, you were processing. While they were looking for shortcuts, you were building stamina. You didn't come from a manual. You became the manual, the one no one wants to write, because it requires too much real, too much raw, too much becoming. So when they study you now, confused by how you move with no guidebook, remember this. They're trying to replicate something that was never meant to be repeated, because you weren't made from strategy. You were made from survival, and that can't be taught, that can't be copied, that can only be lived. Number 9, they wanted you gone. Now they want to know how you rose. They built your exit like a grave, but you didn't just walk out, you rose like smoke, and now they're suffocating in the scent of your survival. They didn't want distance, they wanted your disappearance. They didn't just walk away, they pushed. They slammed doors with the kind of finality that says, this is where your story ends. And they were so sure you'd fade, crumble, shrink into nothing once their support, their approval, their circle was gone. But you didn't disappear. You rebuilt. From rubble, from silence, from places they don't have the stamina to visit, let alone survive. You didn't just bounce back, you rose, and not like they expected. They were waiting for revenge, drama, a meltdown they could mock. Instead, you gave them radiance, peace, glow, power they didn't authorize, and now can't ignore. Now they watch in silence, the same silence they once weaponized against you. But this time, it's not power, it's confusion, it's disbelief, it's fear. Because you weren't supposed to grow without them. You weren't supposed to evolve after they left. They tried to break your voice. Now they whisper your name behind closed doors. How did you do it? How did you go from cast out to captivating? They'll never say it out loud, but deep down they're wondering, what did we miss? They missed the fact that you were never built on their opinions, that you were never chasing acceptance, you were chasing alignment. While they sought control, you sought clarity, and once they were gone, you found it. You realized you were never rejected, you were redirected. You didn't rise by plotting revenge. You rose by healing, by burning the false self they tried to trap you in, by choosing yourself when it would have been easier to disappear. That kind of growth, it terrifies people because it means you were never dependent, just temporarily dimmed. It means their presence was never your foundation, just noise you had to outgrow. You see, they built their status on connections and control, but you built yours on truth. And truth doesn't need permission to rise. They tried to treat you like a phase, a lesson, a mistake. And now you're the blueprint. Now they scroll through your life like it's an instruction manual they were never given. But you didn't write this in ink. You wrote it in blood, in silence, in self-respect, in chapters they skipped. And now it shows. You're not just alive, you're magnetic. You don't just exist. You command attention, not with noise, but with presence. You became the proof they swore would never exist. That you can be cast out, shut down, left behind, and still come back stronger than ever. They wanted you gone. Now they want your formula. But your formula is this: you healed, you aligned, you refused to shrink, and you rose anyway. Number 10, you made it, and you made it whole. That's why they'll never understand you. You didn't sell your soul for the spotlight. You kept your spirit intact, and that's the flex they'll never replicate. They expected you to break something on the way up. Your values, your voice, your integrity, that's how they did it. Trade a little truth for visibility. Sacrifice your essence for acceptance. Water yourself down just enough to fit inside the machine. But you didn't. You rose clean. You built your glow without dirt in your hands. You climbed without cutting anyone's throat. You moved with grace and still got there, wherever there is. And now they look at you, baffled, confused, because you became everything they said was impossible. You didn't fake it, you faced it. And you didn't just succeed. You stayed human through it all. That's what eats them alive. They've mastered performance, but you became presence. They polished their mask, but you became the mirror. And now you're not just walking proof that success doesn't require self-betrayal. You're the teacher they never deserved. They don't clap for that kind of success because it convicts them. You are the version of power they can't plagiarize. Whole, healed, honest. And while they chase applause, you carry something heavier. Peace. You didn't just make it, you made it without becoming them. And that's why they're still watching, because deep down they know you won, but you kept your soul, and now you see it clearly. You didn't just survive what was meant to end you. You became the proof that truth, pain, and power can coexist without compromise. You are the glitch in their system, the light they can't dim, the lesson they never thought they'd have to learn. They're watching because you've already won by staying whole. If this message lit something in you, like the video, subscribe to keep this energy moving, and drop the number 77 in the comments if you know you're one of the chosen. Share this with someone who needs to remember their power.